So this is my review of Avengers Assemble, the Avengers Protocol Part 2, which is the second episode of the two-episode premiere of the new Avengers show known as Avengers Assemble, which is the replacement show for Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which was canceled about a year ago. One of the things I want to say right off the bat is that I wish I watched this I wish I watched these episodes together, because in my first video or review of the show, I sort of commented that I really resist the idea of reviewing story segments. I usually like to read one complete story so that I can fully experience it, and so I can really decide what my thoughts on it are. And I kind of wish I did it here, because some of the problems I had in episode 1 were really addressed in this episode. And some new problems did arise, but I will say that the second episode was a bit stronger than the first one. So in the second episode begins right where the first one ended, with Tony and the Avengers team basically taking him back to Avengers Mansion after the Red Skull tore the arc reactor out of his chest, and they have to race back to the mansion in order to basically give Tony a new arc reactor before he dies. The vehicle they used to get back to the mansion was actually sort of sabotaged by MODOK, and he put some nanites into the vehicle, and once these nanites enter an Avenger's body, they basically make them really aggressive, and then they start just practically killing each other, leaving Iron Man as the only person left who's not under MODOK and the Red Skull's control. It's a fairly simple plot. It's nothing amazing, but I think this is going to be one of those shows where the plots aren't going to be that particularly innovative or groundbreaking, but I think the character stuff is going to be what's going to really make this show enjoyable, because this episode had a lot of great character moments. It had a lot of great banter between the characters. The only guy I really didn't like this episode was Falcon, because the way they're setting up Falcon in this show is that he's sort of Tony Stark's sidekick because he built the Falcon armor. But if you're going to have someone be like Tony's partner / sidekick, then why couldn't you just make it War Machine? Again, I can see the argument that it would be kind of redundant to have two guys in Iron Man armor flying around, but I think Rhodey could have been... you could have done more with Rhodey. I think he's a more interesting character than the Falcon, and I know the Falcon's going to be in Captain America Winter Soldier next year, so they have to sort of include him in here. But again, if you're going to just make him sort of like this guy who gets his powers from Tony Stark, why didn't you just use War Machine? And Falcon's one of my only real problems with this episode. I found him very uninteresting. I found him kind of like that annoying fanboy. He's not like that relatable guy. He's kind of like the guy who had a fairly normal life. Sure, he was in the army and stuff, but he was fairly a normal guy, and now he's in the biggest superhero team on the planet. But unlike Agent Coulson, who's also gotten famous for being sort of the everyman, sort of being a representation of us, the audience, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Falcon's not really that interesting. I don't think his dialogue is that particularly good, and I just don't think he's that good of a character, and I just think they easily could have replaced him with War Machine. However, I will say that in this episode, I really started liking the voice actors a lot. Like Thor, his voice actor sort of really found his stride. I continue to love Black Widow's voice actress, even though she doesn't have a Russian accent. That really doesn't bother me. Tony's voice actor still had a few places where I was kind of iffy on him, but again, I think he's a lot better than the Earth's Mightiest Heroes one, who just sounded like a Robert Downey Jr. knockoff, and that really annoyed me. But again, I will say that while the plot of this episode might seem fairly simple, it's the potential for what's to come and the character interactions that are really good, because the creators of the show definitely understand each of these characters. Like I said, the cool Legolas-Gimli dynamic between Hulk and Thor is still there. They're not so antagonistic towards each other like they were in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. It's kind of a friendly rivalry that started out maybe a little more hostile, but now it's a lot friendlier and stuff. Hawkeye's interaction with Black Widow was really funny when they're both possessed, and she's calling him an incompetent slacker, and he's calling her like this double-crossing Nick Fury watchdog or whatever, and I thought that was kind of funny. And just Hulk's interaction with Hawkeye is just hilarious. Hawkeye just gets the living shit beat out of Hulk. Hawkeye tells him some sort of joke or whatever, or it kind of insults Hulk, and Hulk just, pushes him aside or throws his ass like 50 feet into the sky, and it's always pretty funny. Like, there's some pretty good slapstick in the show. I will say that I just wish a bit of the humor was toned down, because in IGN's review they sort of mentioned that a lot of the jokes sort of downplayed the drama, like they made the drama feel less impactful. And this is one of the problems I had with Iron Man 3, is that there was so much comedy shoehorned in with what was supposed to be a dramatic moment. It made the drama completely fall flat, and it just didn't work. It's not as bad here, but I think that they need to find a proper balance, or else they could suffer the same flaws as Iron Man 3 throughout the entire series, and I really don't want that to happen. The ending of this episode is what really sort of gives me hope that this show is going to get much better as it progresses on. Because at the end of this episode, Red Skull realizes me and MODOK aren't enough. Even with me hijacking Tony's armor, we simply aren't enough. So he sends basically several invitations to some of the big supervillains of the Marvel Universe so that they can create the Cabal, which are basically the dark version of the Avengers. They're sort of the supervillains. They're basically the team that was created to fight heroes no one supervillain can battle. Like, they don't say that in the show, but that's kind of where they're going with them. They're basically the team of villains that was created to combat superheroes that one villain just can't, and I think that's a really interesting thing they could do with them. I like that they're just not using the obvious characters, like they're not using Loki or obvious bad guys like that. They're going a bit more obscure. I'm not going to say who they're going to recruit, and they might recruit Loki later on, but I'm glad that they're sort of taking more obscure characters and making them part of the Cabal. There's one guy in particular who I was really interested in, and I'm sure a lot of people won't be really happy about his inclusion in this. They're just going to feel it's weird and out of place. But I think it has potential, and I really like it when obscure characters are sort of given their chance to shine. So yeah, I will say this one was a little better than the first episode. I think that while the plot was pretty generic, pretty by the books, I will say that the potential is still there. The voice acting is really good. The action was a whole lot better this episode than it was last time. You could clearly see what was going on. It didn't have that many quick cuts and stuff. So yeah, I give Avengers Assemble, The Avengers Protocol Part 2 an 8 out of 10. I think it's a small upgrade over the last episode, and I think if the show really does play with its strengths and weed out all of its weaknesses, I think it can be something really good. Whether or not it's ever going to reach the level of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, I don't know, but I'm sure a lot of people are just gonna dismiss this as another piece of crap show. So I'm gonna ask you guys again, give it a chance. I think it's still a good show that hopefully is gonna get better as it goes on. If it doesn't, I'm just gonna stop watching it, like I did with Ultimate Spider-Man, which just started terrible and then got worse and worse and worse. And the whole deal with that show. So yeah, that's my review of Avengers Assemble, Avengers Protocol Part 2. 8 out of 10. I've got nothing else to say, and I hope I sort of made you guys understand the show just a little bit better, and I hopefully, maybe incentivize you to check it out. So yeah, I got nothing else to say, and I'll see you next time. Bye.